But the whole thing with Richard, you know, there again, it's just sitting in here, and you had mentioned a while ago, you went from Richard Petty, you know, he's on another level. Like, someday I'd like to get his autograph. That kind of thing, to sitting down in an attorney's office and he's going to drive a race car. If you can imagine that in awe, how that happened through Ralph Salvino.
Right.
Same thing, you know, Ralph saw how Bob and I were working when Neil left. Petty Enterprise was going through a rough spell, I guess. I'm not sure all the details,
I think
but
everybody goes through them, a rough patch.
yeah, but Ralph and, you know, we had a relationship, and you know, Ralph evidently tells Richard, why don't you talk to Bob and Butch? And you know, evidently that conversation happened before us, and next thing I know, we're sitting at Daytona after Neil leaves with a prior committee to go to juniors. We're sitting there, didn't know what we're going to do. Now we got Richard Petty driving our race car. So we go to Daytona and test with Richard, and you can imagine seeing Richard Petty climb in your race car, our race car, for the first time. It was like,
From humble beginnings.
yeah, but I mean, it's just
within
like,
5 years of starting. Right?
how did that happen? You
I
know,
mean,
how did
that's
we
what's
get
amazing to me.
to want to
Like
meet
you
the
said,
man
somebody
who
noticed the
climbing our
hard
race
work
car?
and
And Bush,
character.
during that test session, I was there with them, and we were all sitting around the garage, and said that I was the only non-racer in the whole group, and never been on a racetrack. And Richard said, "Well, get you a hat, and I'll take you for a ride." Well, the year before that at Riverside, which you may not remember this, Richard had taken an LA Times photographer for a ride around the last race at Riverside, and the last thing that photographer said to Richard, "Hey, I don't need to go fast, I just want to see what it feels like." They went down the back straightaway 190 miles an hour, and the guy got out of the car and was ready to throw up. So when Richard offered me a ride, I said, "Hey, thanks, but I'm not interested."
Well, the '83 deal, we ain't gonna get too into it, but our world blowed up, and then y'all's opened up, and then it went a little bit along there, and then y'all's blowed up. And Kyle and Richard just did an interview with Mike Curb on the Petty Family Channel. They just did an interview, and it opened up it filled in the blanks somewhat. But anyway, I remember y'all were excited, and it was a good deal for y'all, and then it kind of went away.
Because of politics.
Yes.
And that's what frustrated me and Bob to a bigger degree. Because he's like, why can't we just race? We want to work hard. Now we have all this other stuff. Like, who are these other people? You know, where do they come from? Where do
Interfering with what
what do
you
they
have
got to
going
do with
on.
racing?
Right,
You know,
right.
and it just eroded so terribly because we were on different paths. You know, I mean, the political side didn't go over very well with, you know, we were working our tail off and getting what we had, and then all of a sudden you got somebody.
So you went into '84, January, excited, everything great, and then by the time Daytona come along, y'all didn't know what was going on.
We had an injunction against us.
Right.
Bob Tezak was involved.
Yep.
How he got involved, I don't know. You know, it wasn't through us. All of a sudden, he owns part of my race team. And we said, we're not doing this. And he said, well, you're not racing anymore. You're done. You know, they put an injunction against Bob and I, and we didn't know we could even race ever again, much less a Daytona 500.
I had no idea.
Which is a couple weeks away. So we went through all of that, and then finally, that all got settled just a couple of days before the Daytona 500. And we didn't have a driver. We didn't know if we were even going to be able to race. And we got Dave Marcus to drive the car. That's how that started. So we went from being high in '83
With
to
everything
Richard,
figured out.
to Daytona 500. No sponsor, no driver,
The ups and downs.
legal problems we didn't
Wow.
even know we were going to get out of, and it was a mess.
And that was, racing was evolving, getting ready to get into the big money at the time. So the ups and downs were really big, and ups and downs like,
Well, they came quick.
right, everything changed.
Just like
in a
he
hurry.
said, that was when 2 or 3 months' time, it was.
Yeah.
Now I remember, let's go another year, '85. Y'all showed up down there. We showed up down there with Daddy in that one car with Dick Brooks. Didn't have sponsorship. And y'all showed up down there with Lake Speed.
No
Didn't have no
sponsor.
sponsorship. And
Did
talk
you
about the
take two
Cinderella.
cars that
That
year?
would have been '85.
Yeah.
'86 we had two cars.
Okay.
We had a Ford and a Pontiac.
All right.
But
So-
the Cinderella story that you were talking about kind of happened that weekend because they were on the verge of not really having anything, and then all of a sudden they run second to Bill Elliott.
Lake Speed is here, and he's probably the only fellow in this place who's just as happy as Bill Elliott. You've been down here 3 times for the 500, never finished one until today. Here you're home in second place.
Yeah, Mike, I tell you what, I just can't thank the good Lord Jesus Christ anymore because, I mean, it made it all possible. this place, this team, the people, circumstances, everything, was something that nobody could keep their hands on. I mean, it all came together in a strange way at the last second. I mean, like sponsorship nationwide, automotive parts came on with us last night, and it's been, you know, we just been dragging it out. Had to have faith and just hold on the whole time. But thank God, you know, thank God it's happened and we're here.
Well, Coroner Bob Rahilly is also in tears. You ran all last year without a sponsor. Didn't have one until last night, as Lake said. You guys have got to be thrilled.
We're thrilled, and I'm like Lake. We had a lot of things working for us today. The Lord's obviously on our side. It's coming together for the team. Lake came into our lives, and that was a big plus. And we've got a new sponsor that we're working real hard to show them what we can do, and I think we gave a good accounting of that today, and I think we're back to where we need to be.
Ken, did you ever see a second-place team that was just as happy as the winners? Here they are.
Nobody could beat the winner.
No, that's what I'm saying. They had a heck of a day. And
You
then-
guys had a rabbit foot.
But
Yeah, that
where I'm
car
going
ran
is,
good, so-
you picked up a sponsorship for the year after that,
Right,
nationwide, right?
So we were back in the corner a couple times in my career, and even when Bob and I split up, that's a whole nother story. But I'll tell you, back in the corner where I didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow. Literally, you're that bad. No money, no deal, no nothing, but a lot of desire.
Right.
And it's like, I'm going to figure this out. And about the time you make it, then you get kicked back down again. But so we ran. So Neil was 83 banner year. Went through the winter with Richard. That fell apart. So we pieced together 84 with Dave. Multiple different sponsorship deals. Stumbled along. And the winter comes. We didn't have that great of a year. Just not. Had no money. It was just a mess. So Lake Speed had his team, and then he was shutting his thing down. So Lake calls Bob and I, and it's like, what are you guys doing for the Daytona 500? Because our stuff always ran good down there,
Right.
even before. So we don't have any money, no deal, no, we have nothing. And Lake said, well, he's like, what if I front you? I'm skipping a lot of the details, but he said, I'll give you, I think it was $15,000. And he said, if we don't make the race or something happens, it's just gone. The money is no issue. You don't owe me. It's not a loan. If we go down there and something happens good, then, you can pay me back if you want to pay me back. So Bob and I were like, I don't know. We didn't, it was like
a lot
one
of
race,
effort.
you know what I mean? For one race, not sure. We didn't have anything else going on. So we wound up going down there with no sponsor, cars painted white. It was Pontiac.
Yep.
Cars painted white. And Sunday morning before the Daytona 500, this guy's walking around the garage. Kent Brown was his name, CEO of Nationwide Auto Parts. He's gone down for the Daytona 500. Wanted to put his name on a car. Sunday morning. You know what I mean? So they came to us, plain white car. I think he had met Lake, maybe at the driver's meeting or something. I can't remember. Lake brings him down, introduces him to him, $5,000. He's like, I'll give you $5,000, put Nationwide on the car. So we got a sign painter. We come put Nationwide on the car. We run second at the Daytona 500. So we went from there again,
Yeah.
out of business,
Yes,
didn't know what was
yes,
going to happen.
yes, yes.
We finished second at the Daytona 500. That night, we're at the Hilton on the beach having dinner with the CEO of General Motors, or the highest GM car. We went from, and it was like, it's been a pretty wild day, and for nothing to, and that restarted our career again.
Right.
Because Kent, of course, he was excited, $5,000, he ran second at Daytona 500. And Lake was emotional after the race goes. So that week, Kent said, we're going to do more. We're going to do this. So that week, we wound up cutting a deal with them. And I'll never forget this story. It's a funny story, but Rick Hendrick and I have always been friends. You know what I mean? And so I wound up getting that deal. That was in '85. So Kent makes me an offer. I'm going to say it was maybe $600,000 for the full year. Maybe. I'm thinking the numbers.
This is good money for 85.
Yeah, it was decent. So, and it was a 10-year deal. And it might have gone up 10% a year. I was so excited. I was like, are you kidding me? So he sends us his proposal. I called Rick. And I told him what the deal was. And, of course, he's like, yeah, is there anything how to get? I said, well, the nation can't. I said, sent me a proposal for a 10-year deal. And he said, well, how much money is it? I said, 600 and then a 10-year deal, 10 years. Rick goes, I'll never forget. He goes, don't sign it. I go, what? He said, well, just do it 2 or 3 years at a time. I go, why? It's a 10-year deal. Now, we've been through all this stuff every year. You're struggling, looking. He says, I'll never forget this either. He said, because the year of the $1 million a year sponsor is right around the corner. And I said, there is no way anybody will ever spend $1 million a year, ever. And look where we are today.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But Rick knew that. I mean, Rick said, he said that the $1 million sponsor is right around the corner for that to be the going rate. And I thought to myself, there is no way anybody in my lifetime will ever spend $1 million.
Wow.
And but anyway, we wound up getting a 2 or 3 year deal out of that. The deal. We didn't do a 10-year, but we did a couple-year deal.
Man.
That's awesome. Great story.
Yeah. And that Nationwide thing bled into Valvoline because they were a vendor of Nationwide. Nationwide wound up going under, or the CEO left.
Well,
So
let me
that's
tell
how
you.
we got the Valvoline thing. It was all through relationship.
All right, here's a tie-in, everybody. Valvoline, right? That was Lee Petty's first sponsor back in like '52, and I heard this on an interview. They give him an oil change after every race. That was a sponsorship from Valvoline. So
Talk about
right,
desire.
yeah, but I'm just saying. But he was excited in this interview I was watching, Grandfather, and he was excited because he was talking about that was the first time anybody ever paid him, whether it was product or whatever, for racing. That was like 51, 52. So anyway, Valvoline and Kyle went and won the 79 ARCA race with Valvoline. So there's tie-ins. Like I said, it all ties back in together, don't it? But y'all had a good deal with the Valvoline with Neil, because he won a couple of races for you with the Valvoline.
Yeah,
didn't he?
yeah. So we went and won Richmond and Rockingham with Neil, and then Neil got hurt. Well, Neil had gotten hurt the year before at Charlotte, broke his hip. And then we ended up with some gallbladder health issues, and Morgan came along, and that was the end of our stint with Neil, after he got sick. But, yeah, it's all knowing something. But there again, you just brought up Lee Petty again, and he was excited to have an oil change deal. But they had already been racing, right?
Right.
Well, they weren't racing because of money.
Right. They were.
Why were they racing? Because
Well-
you see what I'm saying? Like, that vein runs through racing people that you can't describe. and
Competition,
you
competitiveness, yeah.
Like, you do stupid stuff.
But
to
he was
race,
racing. He was racing for the purse, more or less, and then he had no idea people would pay you like you're talking about doing $1 million sponsorship. He didn't think nobody even paid him to even go to the race because they were just barely getting there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the competition, the competitiveness, yeah, it's something deep inside your soul that keeps you going.
And it never goes away.
And it never goes away. And you see it in there.
Yeah.
And you see it with the Wood brothers, or you guys, or Robert Yates, or
And I don't care how big you get, how successful you become. Racing has a way of knocking you right back down.
Oh,
And
it'll humble you.
you're telling these stories. I'm sitting here thinking of our family and how the ups and downs for us.
Well, and outside looking in on their deal, you'd have never known they were struggling
not
that
that
bad.
bad.
From,
Yeah.
from
Y'all
outside
hit it.
looking
Y'all
in.
hit it well.
Right.
But there's, fortunately, we had some success. Not like you guys, but people come and go. But able to win a race is a big deal. When you look in the history book, not a lot of people get to do that. But you look at the DNA that we all had talking about us, but the Jimmy Means of the world, and the Elmo Langley's of the world, the people that are forgotten, the names, Frank
JD,
Warren. I'm
JD.
going way back.
They were no different.
They were no different and didn't really have the success, but yet James Hill, you look at these guys, everything they had and every fiber in their body that they wanted to worked on a race car. Right. And you can't, what it is, I don't know because I haven't, but
It's a curse.
you can't give it to somebody.
Look at Richard Childress.
Right.
Richard Childress, the struggles he went through in the beginning. He should have just thrown his hands up
He
and quit.
started building a race car in his driveway.
And then look at the
Everything.
success they had. So it's like,
But everybody has a common thread
Right,
that
exactly.
just made it.
never give up. That's the main
It's
thing.
just, and it's something you can't, I don't know, it's just,
Well, you can't get rid of it. either.
it's overwhelming too, because it completely run your life, you know what I mean?
Hey, listen, I haven't talked much and I won't tell many stories, but I was friends with Brad and Todd Parrott. Brad was my age.
Yeah.
And I went on to college and did other things, and I went back to Atlanta. I had lost the job and went back to Atlanta. Dad was working with Butch, and I saw Brad, and I said, "Hey, Brad, let's go to dinner. I want to talk about stuff." And he goes, "Man, I can't go to dinner. I go back to the hotel and go over data or whatever it was." Things had changed, you know. And then I called him. He was working. I don't remember who he was working for. I called him the next week, and he said, "What's up?" I said, "Listen, I lost my job, and I want to get back in." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I come to the racetrack." And I said, "I smelled the gas and I smelled the tires, and I gotta come back." And he said, "Man, you don't want to do this." He goes, "I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help you, man. You don't want to do this. This is hard." But man, every time I'd come back, all I'd have to do is I'd get around the smells, and man,
Well, there's nothing like
I
that fresh
couldn't-
exhaust. You don't want a good brand new
Well,
lights.
it's either in your blood or it isn't. But if
And
it
it's
is,
never been a job, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
It's never been a job.
right.
It's just a lifestyle. It's like you elect to do it. Like you don't,
Now, we were talking earlier too, and I'd forgot about this, but y'all, Raymont, won international races with Neil in Australia, right?
That's correct.
Neil and,
Twice.
and Morgan, yeah, went over to our Thunderdome and won. I didn't go, Bob. Did you go to those races?
Yes, and I was the oldest tire changer. Bob told me when we left L.A. He said, "By the way, Ken, I got a job assignment for you in Melbourne." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You're the crew chief on my second car and my tire changer." I said, "Bob, I've never changed a tire in my life." He said, "But no, you've seen enough of it. You know how to do it. You're my tire changer." And I changed tires.
Well, we used to show up for the ARCA races and stuff like that. We didn't have a full crew either, so everybody had to chip in and do more stuff. But we were lucky enough that people would come help us and do things. But I've told this story, and it's always funny to me that we was at Texas World Speedway running a race, and I was strapped in, getting ready to go, and then I come across the radio. I said, "All right, Mr. Spotter, what's it look like today?" And nobody said a word. And I said, who's spotting today?" And nobody said a word. And I finally said, "Who's the spotter?" And Daddy come across and said, "You're on your own."
He said, "You gonna drive and spot."
Yeah.
You
So I
got
had
two
to
jobs.
double duty.
It's not like they didn't do it before.
But like they were having to change tires and carry tires by themselves. So I mean, we had to double up, and I had to spot and drive that day. So it was. I understand exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about the
I
struggles.
want to talk about Ken a little bit, and you keep saying you're the oldest, and you're the oldest today, by the way. But anyway, so
I'm catching.
you had a stint in the Marine Corps early on. So what year was you in the Marines?
I
mean, if
told-
you care,
well,
tell.
Okay, the early 50s, I went into the Marine Corps, spent some time in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
I turned 88 last week, and I'm still in the Marine Corps.
So tell us that story there. I really
Very,
enjoyed
very
it.
quickly, I transport, I work for part-time for a company out of Raleigh, North Carolina that has a military contract to move military folks. I live in Montgomery. I have a company with 15-passenger van, and I move every Marine recruit that goes to Parris Island from Montgomery to Parris Island, South Carolina. Been doing that 15 years. I'm still doing it. DOT approved. Last Wednesday, I went to Parris Island with 10 Marines and 789 miles round trip. And I've been doing that, and I've made 158 trips to Parris Island with my Marine hauling campaign.
Well, we want to thank you for your service.
Well, thank you very much. Lord's been good to me. David was a former Marine too, and we just know how to work and protect our country.
Well, thank you.
Well, Dad didn't tell y'all that the guy that gives him the DOT physical is a good friend of his.
Well, we will get into that. We appreciate what you're doing.
Hey, we can edit that part out, right?
There you
Now,
go.
y'all go back to the Raymont days. My favorite sponsor of y'all's was the Pet Dairy.
Okay.
Because
Oh,
I remember
yeah.
being at Bristol when we was a kid, and they had the
Ice
truck
cream.
there.
Yeah.
Go over and get all the free ice cream. We and Mark wore them out.
Yeah, we must
They
have
put a
1,000.
cooler in the shop too, and they had ice cream in the shop.
So we
Ned
wore
Jarrett got me that deal.
them. Oh, okay.
Is that right?
There's always a connection somewhere.
Yeah, everybody's that always ties back in.
Well, there's no way to cover all the area that we need to cover here, and we just want to tell you all how much we appreciate you coming.
Yep.
We appreciate all y'all done for us through the years. And
It's-
I hope we have several more years of friendship.
Well,
because
and
it's-
again, it's humbling that, yeah, you knew you were friends back then when you was at the race every week, but here we are now.
Yeah.
And we're
Well,
still friends, and to
right.
me, that's the biggest blessing of life is these lifelong
Exactly
friendships
right.
we've got.
Well, you guys, I've never met any of y'all, but I know through Dad,
Yep.
through Butch, it's like I've known y'all.
And
you
Grandpa
know.
Lee.
Yeah, that's a story we didn't tell either, but yeah.
We had a whale of a time, didn't we?
Sure have.
But the
man.
things that racing has done for all of us,
Exactly.
you know, we're sitting here today, but then all the things we've got to see and do and experience, and like you can't.
Yep.
We've traveled to some places.
Well, I'm amazed that you got to drive against David Pearson and Richard Petty.
Well,
and
Heck yeah.
Bobby
we all
Allison.
right.
You got to
In
race
their
against them
prime,
in their
in their
prime.
prime.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you that the year before, because I was racing Highland Speedway, and then we wanted to go to Charlotte. I told you, but the very next year, sitting on pit road at Daytona. If you can imagine, just a little kid racing. I wasn't a little kid, but I'm saying racing at Highland Speedway and then sitting at Daytona 500. What went through my mind? It was, I'll never forget, ever. You know, sitting there saying, how in the world did we get from that to this?
Well,
You know, then from that to Richard Petty sitting in your car. I mean, all these milestones were like
That's crazy.
Pretty
just-
quick,
just
too.
fun stuff, you know. It just,
Well, I actually worked for Butch for 20 years, and let me tell you, he's a great man. And at 10 years of service with Butch, can I tell this story, Butch?
of course.
Butch said to me, he said, and others, I wasn't the only one to receive this, but he rigged me up with a Rolex watch that I wear today, and I spend
forgot about that
spend a
until
lot of
you-
money every time getting it refurbished. But Butch is a great, honest man, and he's been a great friend of mine, starting out as a volunteer and then going to work for him.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's a nice story.
Thank you.
And now, I mean, we're off. Butch and I talk every. I don't know.
Well, my son was racing Trans Am, and David was Darren's biggest fan.
Yeah, we were.
Go to the races and
We worked hard to try to get him some
help
sponsorship
him
and
find sponsorship. And David was taking it personal. I said, David, don't. He said, I feel really bad. I can't. I said, David, don't. You're trying to help. Yeah, but I feel terrible. I'm not able to get you anything. It's like, I spent my whole career looking for money trying to race.
Amen.
And I tell my wife, I'm like, I've known this guy since I was 11 years old. I mean, you and Bob, Bob, more stories. I don't know, we'll probably be trying to wrap it up, but we went, when they still had the motor shop in Miami, I rode with Bob back on a Cessna, because Bob's a pilot, to the shop in Miami, because I like to work on the engine, so that's where I gravitated toward. And he and Dickie were flying the plane, and I was in the back, and there was a motor. We were taking a motor back to Miami. And Bob, I was falling asleep in the back of that airplane, and the airplane shut off. And I came up out of the seat, and they were up there just trying to get the airplane going. And they probably 2 minutes we floated, and then they turned it back on, and or they started running again. And I said, "What happened?" Bob turned around, and he goes, "I bet you about peed in your pants." We just turned the engine. They just turned it off. Just messing with me. And I could sit here and tell y'all 100 stories, and probably 99 of them are about Bob.
Now y'all had a landing strip at that one shop, didn't
Right.
you?
Yeah, we were on the way back to Miami.
We could sit for days talking.
We could.
Well, let's go back. So you mentioned Fred Wonky, Joe London, the McLeod brothers, which Bill still works for Bob and Dick, and Robbie McLeod. And we call them carrots because you just pluck another carrot out of Florida. That was always the joke.
That was everything was gray and everything was a carrot.
So I guess Baloo was from down in there.
He was.
And who else?
Dickie Anderson was from down there.
Wow. I didn't know.
Banjo Matthews.
So
If you think of what's come out of Highland Speedway, you got Red
Bobby
Farmer,
Donnie.
Bobby Donnie,
And Freddie.
Banjo,
Banjo Matthews.
Freddie
yeah.
Fryer, he ran that.
all from
and you guys,
Hamke. Robert was from there.
you was still operating out of Miami. You're still basically a kid,
Mhm.
busting your butt, like you said. But you guys, we'd get home, and you guys were still on the road trying to get back to Miami because you was commuting back and
You know,
forth
think
every
about
week.
it, like a race at Michigan.
We never slept.
Right. Yeah.
was every week.
And we drove. I
They
mean,
had
it
to
was
rebuild the car.
Yep. Took us 12 hours to get back here and then took them 12 more to get there.
Right.
Crazy.
And the volunteer
We
guys
talk
like
about that
Dad
a
were
lot.
going back
Florida's
to their
a boring
house.
state too to drive through, but we did that. I can't tell you. But that's when you finally say, well, maybe we can make this work. We're gonna have to move. You can't race that way,
Right.
Yeah.
But you did it a long
but
time.
we did because you had to.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Well, look, we're gonna have to invite you all back, and we'll probably have to split this up 17 ways for Sunday. But anyway, appreciate you coming by.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you, thank you.
Like and subscribe and keep checking in on us. We got more stuff coming. Thanks.